Hello, Mercy. Happy New Year. We are recording this in January, so I feel like it's still a new year. Asante sana for making the time. So excited to talk about actuarial science. What do they need to know before they choose to do actuarial science? And then once they've chosen and they are now studying actuarial science, what are some of the things you think they should be aware of, especially the exams? And then also after, just so that they set themselves apart for success and so that they thrive in the career. But first and foremost, asante sana and thanks for coming.
Thank you, Gladys. Happy New Year to you too. I think, the year is still pretty young, so really appreciate to be one of your first guests this year. And just to clarify, this is my first ever interview, so I'm really excited. But again, this is a first for me, so let's see how this goes. So I think I'm just thinking the best approach probably is let's just talk through my journey as an actuary. So that's before settling on actuarial as a course, my journey during my university days, my journey immediately after university, and my current career. Do you think that's
yes,
right way to?
Yeah, no, I like the way you've broken it into those three phases, and we'll definitely do that. But before we go there, can you define what is actuarial science? And the reason why I'm asking is because, but it's been a while when I got my KCSE, and everyone in my family was like, there is this new hot course in town, you need to do it. It's called actuarial science, and I actually wanted to apply for it, but anyway, I ended up doing engineering. So define what actuarial science is for people at home. And then also, before we go there, Mercy, can we just acknowledge that you are a very seasoned and a renowned actuary, one of the very few in Kenya actually registered or qualified actuaries, right?
Yeah, that's accurate, Gladys, where I feel like you are exaggerating it. So luckily over the past 2 decades.
How many are registered in Kenya?
So I think currently we are just under 100 qualified actuaries, but there's quite a number of actuarial students, associate actuaries, and we'll get into the details of the journey to qualification in a bit. But luckily, there's just been so much progress in the actuarial space in Kenya over the past 2 decades, thanks to the people who came before us. And so I think this conversation is just one way to pay it forward to the next generation of actuaries. So quite excited to have this conversation with you. On to your question on what actuarial science is. So I think the way I think about it is life is, there's always risk at most institutions, be it a bank, be it an insurance company. And actuaries, where there's risk, you actually need an actuary. Reason being, actuaries, the way I describe it, is we use mathematics and statistics to quantify and understand risk. So if you think about it, risk is present in our everyday life. So maybe each of us needs an actuary, jokes aside. So if we just break it down into what exactly is actuarial science, so typically actuaries work in insurance companies. So I'll use that as the most basic of examples. And I'll use car insurance, which most people would, would relate to or possibly understand, wrap their heads around. And just describe what an actuary would typically do in that context. So say if, you need to buy car insurance, an actuary would be charged with designing that product. So understanding, if I'm selling, so for an insurance company, if I'm selling car insurance to person A, what are the risk exposures to the company? So there's a possibility they'll be involved in an accident. If they're involved in an accident, there's the chance that the car will be damaged, or they'll cause damage to third parties, so other road users or, the passengers within the car. So the first aspect of actuarial work is product design. So designing these insurance products. Then once the products are designed, the next aspect is putting a price to the, you've designed a product. So there's different risk exposures. So you need to put a price to that. So you'd use data. So you'd analyze historical data, this is how the claims have been emerging in the past. And this is, sort of predicting what's the possible losses from this insurance policy. So the actuary would be, you check historical data, just try understand any trends in that data and put a price to that insurance product. Then once the product has been sold, so the brokers will take the product, or like to be sold via apps, like now that we have technology enabled, insurance sales. So the product is sold out there. So what the insurance company has essentially done, it's sold a promise to the customer. In the event that a loss occurs, you are involved in an accident, or for health insurance, you need hospitalization. We've sold you that promise that in that event, we'll pay up for the claims, of course, like subject to the terms and conditions of the product. So in that aspect, we are selling you a promise that will be fulfilled in the future. So again, the actuary comes in that aspect. So it needs to advise the company on how much money to put aside in anticipation of these claims. So, that's the typical, I think like more than 60 or so % of actuaries do that kind of work, and that's called reserving. So that is estimating the liability or the pot of money that the companies need to set aside in anticipation of claims, So that's the typical job of an actuary. Then in addition to that, so the last scope would be, like under normal scenarios, we know you set aside this amount of money in anticipation of claims. But again, there's always like one-off events, like COVID-19 is a very good example. So this is like a scenario where like it's just like it's not an ordinary event. So most of the modeling before that would be modeling to capture the typical losses. But then you have to think about these, tail events. You call them tail events, like extreme events, like rare events. But if they happen, they cause systemic, risk, and so like companies need to prepare for such scenarios. And that's where the capital actuaries come. So up and above the liabilities that the company has set aside, how much more should it hold in anticipation of these very rare events? Yeah. So that's, I think, like I would think about like actuarial work as we are equipped to utilize data to help companies understand the risk, quantify the risk, and prepare for the risk for when it happens.
Amazing. And then, where do you guys come in now that when we hear all these stories in Kenya where someone gets accident and they are filing claim and the money is not coming in? Are you guys involved with that, with not releasing our claims?
That's a very political question, but yes, I think that's where technology is, hopefully really coming in to just help simplify insurance products. Because if you think about a market like Kenya, we typically be selling insurance products to people who are, so they are experiencing insurance for the very first time. And most of the insurance products, sadly, that are off the shelf would be very heavy with clauses, So I think like currently what you're seeing is in the, with all this technology, with people becoming more tech savvy, we are seeing companies really using data and technology to develop that competitive edge. So they don't want to continue, like you're just having very bulky, insurance policies that customers can't really get past. And, like in the event of a claim, then it just becomes a whole different scenario. So we are really hoping that with data and technology and, the market's really just becoming more aware, we are able to just cross this hump. But I agree, it's a problem in some countries.
Okay. And before we go into the three phases we had mentioned earlier, the before starting it, and then during the course, and after, can we? If there is this question that many parents, we know that KCSE results, they were just released the other day, and parents are asking, is this course marketable? If they ask you such a question regarding actuarial science, what do you tell them? Okay. Is actuarial science marketable?
Yeah, that's a very valid question, because I think like here, especially when people are trying to decide like what course they should do at university, like what career path they should essentially like follow. So I think for me, the long and short answer would be a yes, but So it's a yes, but there's a lot we'll speak about just to help, either like families or students who are really trying to make this decision, to ensure that you walk into the profession with full knowledge of, like what it entails to really qualify as an actuary, what it entails to build a successful actuarial career. And I think, so that's like the long and short. So it's marketable. It's, you can build a career out of it, but there's things you need to do, which I think is true for most courses. The world is super, super competitive now. So it's actually true for all, like for most courses. I think there's more that needs to be done, which I think is what will really make you stand out as an actuarial student. So we can get into the detail of that.
Definitely have a book and a pen here to make notes. So take it away. So for a student who is thinking of doing actuarial science, but what number? Maybe we start from high school. I know there are some courses that they need to have done in high school before they even are allowed to pursue actuarial science. So take it away, Mercy. Break it for us. What do they need to know before they even choose?
Yeah, I think that's a good place to start. And probably I'll take it up by just like taking us through my own journey into actuarial. Like, how did that even happen in the first instance? So I think for me, growing up, so like those things you say growing up, maybe at age 5 or 4, maybe 4 is an exaggeration. But whenever I got asked like what would you like to do when you grow up, I think my response is always, I'd like to be a professor in mathematics. But it's because I was always like strong, like that's the bit of my brain that's, just, numbers and just like, so I think like for me, it's
Mercy. Wait, a professor? Where did you grow up? A professor? Oh, yeah, sorry. Good.
Yeah, no. I honestly don't even know where where I learned about the word professor, because maybe it was one of those buzzwords. Yeah, but yeah. So for me, like growing up, like maths was my natural inclination. So like my initial, like what I really wanted to become was a professor in maths, or something along those lines. Yeah, so I proceed to high school, and in high school, so I think like in my third year of high school, that's when, individuals need to start thinking about, okay, now I've done 2 years into my secondary school, like what are my natural strong points out of all these subjects I'm studying? So for me, that happened just to be courses that had any numbers. So like your physics, your, mathematics, your business studies. So again, like it just kept reinforcing that that's my strength. So I remember how I bumped into this career I think in like my third year of high school, like the last year before my final year of high school. So I was going through a business education textbook, and one of the topics was on insurance. Then on the glossary, they were defining different terms within an insurance context. So the first term on the list was an actuary. So I was just curious, okay, so who is an actuary? So I read it. They're like a person who uses, who calculates the premium. My heart just skipped. I was like, this is it. Someone who calculates the premiums. I just felt, like this is what I think, I am. This is what I think I need to do. So for me, that was my first ever. So that was at age 17. So that was my first ever time I heard about the word actuarial, the word actuarial science. And that will be the case for most students. So one, it's sort of like a buzzword for most, students in Kenya, at least Kenya as the context for these, scenario. It's a buzzword. So that was the first time I was learning of that word actuarial, let alone even know if there's actually any actuary who exists in Kenya, or even in the world. Like I didn't know about this term. Yeah, so I learned about that word. Then luckily, so there was like one of those, like the way you have like mentors who are neighbors, like a neighbor who was like a few years ahead of me in high school, maybe a year or two. So I think when I was in my last year of high school, coincidentally, he got called to go and do actuarial. And this is someone I used to look up to. And, like he was a very, scores well in his exams, went to a very good high school. So for me, like that felt like it cemented. I was like, "Ooh, okay, clearly this is the course, this is the course, this is the course I think I'd like to do." Yeah, so you'd imagine that feels extremely uninformed for, that's how I ended up in actuarial. And that's the case for most of the students. But what exactly did I do to move myself from that point where I had barely any information about actuarial to the career I've built so far? So I'll just take us through those steps, if that makes sense. Yeah, so that was high school. So I finished high school then. So luckily, this neighbor mentor of mine who'd also been called to do actuarial. So luckily, he was like 2 years ahead of me. So he goes into uni. Then they, I think they had like an open day at his university. So he was at Maseno University. So they have an open day at the university. So he invites me to attend, just because I think I want to do actuarial, but I know nothing about actuarial. So that was an extremely useful place to go to before even committing to the course. So I joined the open day and just hear about all these students who are studying actuarial, hear about the exams that need to be done. So it was at that open day that I had all this information. Then, so when I went back home, I was still very clear that I'd like to do actuarial. Then the next step for most students, again, just similar to my situation, would be, this is the first time your parents are hearing about this word actuarial. Again, how do you skip that, that hurdle of convincing them that, I think this is actually, something we can explore together. And that's where all these conversations come, because then you'll be going to your parents or your guardians from a point of knowledge of, this is the research I've done. This is what, you need to do to make a successful career. So for me, here, I think just given that I had attended the open day, I had, I sort of sounded a bit more informed. So it was still a bit challenging, convincing, just making the sense of, I'm not going to do medicine, or I'm not going to do all these things. I'm going to do actuarial, which no one knows anything about. So I really thank my parents for believing in, believing in me to just take an uncharted path and supporting me through the way. So I never take that really for granted, because they just really cemented, the decision I had made with very little knowledge of what exactly this would end up being. So yeah, so I do the open day then, when I was waiting for my admission to the university. Then I think we see a newspaper advert about actuarial being offered in Strathmore. So I applied for for a scholarship. Then I joined Strathmore and get a scholarship and pursue my actuarial at Strathmore University. Yeah, but I think just stepping it back to, if you've just currently received your KCSE results and you're deciding, is actuarial the right path for me? I think I'd urge you to just take a step back and understand, what are your strengths. So if you have a natural inclination to numbers, you're just understanding the world through numbers, or or business, or because basically it's utilizing data to quantify the risks, to understand the risks, and to quantify the risks and understand the risks. So if you are pretty excited with numbers and data, then it's likely a career you should explore. And in terms of how to set yourself up for success. So once you start university, so there is, and I think this is quite true for most courses now, as I had already initially mentioned, there is the degree. So there's the actuarial degree, but there's additional things you need to do on the side. That would be the same case for lawyers, for computer scientists. I feel like that's just the current world. It's super competitive, and it really requires you to take the next step just to be able to set yourself up for success. So in the case of students, it would be, here. So if you do your actuarial course in Kenya or, in Nigeria, like most countries in Africa, for you to be called an actuary, for you to qualify as an actuary, you need to sit some professional exams, which are offered by international bodies. So there's international examining bodies. So there's one in the UK that's called the Institute and Faculty of Actuaries, so IFOA. Then there's the US examining body. It's called the Society of Actuaries. So that's the SOA. So those are the two common ones that most people typically tend to do, just because by the Kenyan constitution, you have to, like here, you have to, for you to use the title actuary, you have to get that accreditation. So it's one thing to do the course, but the next step is doing these professional courses. Yeah. Yes, I don't know if I should pause and you can ask any questions or, yeah.
No, you are doing great so far. I'm trying to follow your journey and your explanation using a KCSE candidate brain, or someone who is actually already in the course. And I think there is something you once mentioned, because I saw you guys reading for these exams, and I was like, why are you doing this extracurricular? And you're like, actually, it's important for the career. And you were telling me something that many students are not aware. At what point do you know that you need to do these exams? Because people do the course, and then after, because also these exams, you have to mention that they cost money, right?
Yes.
And time. Yes. So at what point, for the students who are already studying actuarial science in school, and they are expecting that, like many courses, you just graduate with actuarial science degree and you get a job, but then they realize that it's actually kind of constrain you a little bit if you've not done these exams, like you've mentioned. So how did you know that you need to do this exam, or how do they know that they need to do this exam? Is it something that they mentioned during the course?
Yeah, I think that's a very, very valid question. And I think my response would be very different 10 years ago. But my response now would be, one, we are having this conversation. So hopefully through this video, they'll immediately, pick that. In addition to my, the actuarial degree, I need to actually do these actuarial exams. Then luckily over the past, decade or two, the profession has really been growing in Kenya. And we are seeing like so many initiatives, because I think it's a gap that the profession has, appreciated, that there was a gap for a very long time between the knowledge of the course, like at university, and practice, like how do people actually become actuaries? So like there was that big gap between students just blindly taking the course, then being caught after 4 years, you're like, oh, this actually significant thing that I should have done. So luckily now the info is out there. So we have like different actuarial bodies. So we have, for the students, for the ones who are currently at university, so I think they'll be so much aware of the Actuarial Student Society. I think that's what it's called. Then now we have like TASC, which is the Actuarial Society of Kenya. Then we have like Actuarial Academy of East Africa. So I think like now we have like so much information, and the students should, at least like at a basic, know that, it's just not about the course. There's also the exams that are needed. But just to step back on the exam journey on itself. So I think as you rightly mentioned, you need to become aware, like say before you start the course, then sort of like just have a target to start thinking about starting exams, say after your second year of university. Because for the two examining bodies I mentioned, like they sort of like require, like you should have done like say like a year or two at uni, or like they require, like there's different like entry requirements for your first exams. But I think like a good time to possibly think about starting the exams is after your second year of university. So you sort of like need to just have that at the back of your mind. And I think for most students, there's always like the financial constraint, because the exams are pretty expensive, just given our context and most of the students' context. And I think like but luckily, so the exams are pretty expensive, but luckily over the past decade, there's just like been so much, again, just an appreciation of this gap, and like the fact that the exams are quite expensive. There's been lots of different organizations partnering up to help students from, less advantaged backgrounds be able to access the exams.
Mercy, you say expensive. What? How much are we talking about?
Yes, I think at least like when I did the exams, I remember it used to be in the range of 30,000 per exam.
What?
And that's like a reduced rate. So as a student, you'd qualify for a reduced rate. So I think like now it's around, I think it's still about the same price, maybe 35,000 to 40,000 per exam. But as I mentioned, and this is like what I wanted to really focus on these aspects, because I've been involved in, some of this work, and I'll just like give my own, my own views on, what you're seeing, and what I'd encourage students who are just starting out the course, just to be extremely aware of these. Yeah, so I think the exams are quite expensive, but as I said, there's just been so much, progress in terms of helping bridge the gap to just ensure there's more fair access to these exams. And there's been like scholarships developed by the Actuarial Academy of East Africa. So it actually currently runs 2 scholarships. So one is geared towards the I4 exams, so the Institution Faculty of Actuary, so the UK exam. So like there's a scholarship through the Actuarial Academy of East Africa to support students through, their I4 exam, their initial I4 exams, which is what you really need, just the initial exams. Because then like once you get your first job as an actuary, most times the employer takes it up from there. So you'll have a study package, they'll pay for your exams, they'll give you leave for, so it's just the initial, the initial exams, yeah. So they have like these scholarship by the I4, and we'll just share the link under this video. Then there's also a similar scholarship for the Society of Actuary exams. So I think like for me, I know like those are just like 2 scholarships, but there's now like, like funding available to support students who'd really, really be keen to take up like the exams alongside their studies. But I think like what I've found, like just volunteering at the academy, it's always like quite difficult to get the students to apply in the first instance, So I think, I think like exactly how you reacted was my exact reaction, right? Because we understand, most of the students now appreciate that you have to do the degree, but you also have to do the exams. Then there's now like possibly funding available. But I think like most of the times they actually struggle to get the number of students to apply. So I think like I just really encourage the students to check out these opportunities, to follow the LinkedIn pages of these different organizations, just so that you're in the know and you know what exactly you need to do to qualify for this funding, so that you are always prepared for when opportunity strikes, right? Because at times it strikes once and it's gone. So I think that's just one point to highlight. Then I think I'll also just highlight how some of my friends were able to still do the exams despite, and again, just to speak about like, there's just like there's a few options on ways you can still really try access the exams, finances notwithstanding. So I remember like one of my friends from university, and some of my friends from university actually. So there is now like a few qualified actuaries or actuaries who've gone ahead of these students. And people are always open to paying it forward. People are always open to, like just mentoring the next generation of actuaries. And I've seen cases where people have actually been generous enough to pay for people's exams. So like, for instance, my husband and I, we are both actuaries. We've been able to pay for 1 or 2 students, just initial exams, just to help them get into the profession. I have like some friends who other senior actuaries in the industry were able to kickstart them off in that manner. So I feel like where there's a will, there's always a way in most instances. So I feel like, like students should really just put themselves out there, be willing to just on the course. If you end up deciding to pursue actuarial, on it with everything it comes with, which, in this case is you have to do the exams, just to practice as an actuary. So, and there's all these opportunities. So there's the Actuarial Academy of East Africa with its scholarships. There's, actuaries who've gone ahead of you. There's a few opportunities that you can really tap into to be able to support you through the exams.
Oh, amazing! And thank you for doing that, Mercy. And it's really commendable. I'm sure the student or whoever you supported appreciate, and hopefully they can also pay forward.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. How many exams are these, and how many did you do during undergrad?
Yeah, that's a very.
And how are you doing them actually? When are you doing these exams?
Sorry, how?
How many exams? How many of these exams are you supposed to do before you qualify?
Qualify.
And how
Yeah.
many did you do during your
Oh, well, that's a very good question. Yeah, so the way the exams are structured, so my time, so I I was at university 10 years ago, and like, yeah, I qualified as an actuary. Now it's 5 years ago. So yeah, so this is info relating to that period, but things have not significantly changed. So my time, there were 15 exams needed to qualify as an actuary. Typically, I think at the time, like, yeah, the average time to qualification for an actuary who'd studied, in Kenya. And again, maybe like I'm mentioning Kenya like so much. So I'm from Kenya. But the other thing is, if you've studied in the UK or, like, yeah, in the US, for instance, if you take particular courses, you'd get exemptions from some of these exams. So naturally, it would mean that maybe they'll take a bit less time to qualify compared to someone who'd have to do all the exams. So that's why I keep like referring to my own context, which was, I had done my degree back in Kenya. Yeah, so at the time it was 15 exams to qualify. So they were split into three categories. So there was the core technical exams, which was basically, like the core actuarial courses. So your statistics, your financial mathematics, which would be courses on time value of money or discounting, or like just the grounding of actuarial work. So that's the core technical stage. Then there was I've forgotten the names, but yeah, so there was, I think like there was an applied stage, yeah, but there were like basically 15 papers cut across like 3 stages. So then the last phase was the fellowship exam. So like this was the exam just before, like qualification. So like now you're specializing, Yeah, so and the core technical exams are like 8 exams out of the 15. So like half of the courses were like just basically the core grounding of actuarial work. So for me, and luckily I was able to do like half of my exams while I was at university. And that I feel like that, like, yeah, so I think like typically people would do between 2 to 4 exams while at university, then you proceed to do the rest while you are, like you're studying. Sorry, you're working. Yeah, so for me, I was lucky enough to do half of my exams while I was at university, and then like proceeded to complete the rest of my exams after university. So I feel like it's a similar structure now. So I think now there are 13 exams, possibly half of them, like people, like, yeah, half of them are just the core technical papers. Yeah, but in terms of the typical, like, yeah, setup of exams, as soon as I registered for my exams after my second year at university. So I just did one exam in the first instance. So register for the exam. Then I think a typical challenge is always, this is something you're doing alongside your degree. So it just makes your university workload just more, but it's necessary. But one thing we don't realize when we are at university is just like the amount of time we actually have. So student life is always the time you have the most, you have sort of like you have the most time in your hands. So it's all about how am I utilizing all this time I have in my hands. At that time, it doesn't feel like you have a lot of time, but there's actually quite some time you have while at university, which everyone should try and utilize to the best possible way. So in my case, I opted to utilize it to start off my examinations. So I was able to do 8 exams while at university. Then I think the things that really helped me do these exams at university was you're doing it in the midst of other students who are in the same exact scenario as you are in. So you sort of you automatically have these buddies you can team up with to do similar exams, to go through the revision, the waves of revision together. Yeah, so you sort of it's like a prime time to actually do things together that will set you up and also your peers up for success in the future. So I'd really encourage students, one, just know there's opportunities for funding for the exams. There's limited students who are really taking up these opportunities, so go for it. Then just accept what you need to do alongside your studies and just go for it. The sacrifice is worth it. So it comes at a sacrifice, but it's totally worth it.
Oh, totally. And just so that we quantify, what are some of the things, some of the one or two things you from your own experience that qualifying as an actuary has enabled you to achieve or to do that if you are not qualified as an actuary, you would not be able to do? Maybe career wise, I don't know if that matters. Also salary wise, in Kenya we like money matters. So yes, would tell us, is there, like, why should I invest all this money to qualify as an actuary? Are there like advantages to qualifying as an actuary?
Yeah, that's a very good question. So I would say definitely yes. Like it's like yeah, it's the qualification that has enabled me chart out a path as like in the actuarial profession. And yeah, that aside, I think like regardless of what anyone decides to do, like you sort of like have to, for you to be a master of your trade, or for you to really understand your trade, you need to appreciate like what that particular trade dictates of you, and actually if you can go to the highest possible qualification, or just like really just ground yourself just so that you actually have the skill set to do your role effectively. Yes, I think the actual degree in itself can actually still afford you like so many opportunities, and I think that's one thing we could possibly cover. So I have from my class at university, I think maybe we were like 30 of us. Not all of us opted to pursue the actuarial exams. Some of my classmates pursued half the exams, then they opted for other career paths. So luckily, not doing the exams is not the end of everything. It's actually, the good thing with the course is it's extremely broad. So it can actually be a good introduction to, like your different career paths, but you'd still need to do the work required in those different career paths. So it's not sort of like an escape route of this other path is easier than the actuarial path. Then just to stop beating about the bush and answer your question on what has it really helped me with so far. So I feel like just pursuing the global exams has really opened up the path to have a global actuarial career. So I started out my actuarial career back in Kenya. So that was in 2015. Then I worked there for 2 years. Then I came for my master's at Oxford for another 2 years. Then I went back to Kenya, worked for 1 year. Then luckily, just because, I was already doing my actuarial exams, it's a globally recognized qualification, I was able to secure a role in the UK, which is where I'm currently in. So I think like one thing I feel like for sure, just doing the actuarial degree and my master's from Oxford would likely have not afforded me was the opportunity to actually, and right now things have really changed, but at the time, I think it would have been harder for me to be able to navigate a career globally without that global, qualification. So I feel like it sort of like helped even out like the playing field for actuaries or students who studied, say, in Kenya or Nigeria or Ghana or Philippines, just wherever, and they aspire to have like to work in a different market. So for me, I feel like that's one thing that the qualifying as an actuary has really helped with. So one, just to get my foot into the UK actuarial market, but also just to create a career here.
Oh no, certainly. And now that you're talking about your career in the UK, and I've been following your career, of course, and it's really it's inspirational. Let me just say it's inspirational. So do you mind sharing what you currently do? I don't know if you can mention the company you work for, mostly also for the actuarial science students, the ones who just received their KCSE results and they're trying to just like fantasize, well, what will their career be looking like 10 years from today if they choose to do actuarial science? What is your day-to-day role like at your current company? You can also share the companies you've worked for in the past, and on a daily basis, like, what do you do? Do you enjoy it?
Yeah. So I think definitely the answer is yes. I do enjoy what I do most of the days. So if I just step back into, what, like how my career has looked like so far, just to paint a picture of, that typical actuarial career for any students out there. So after university, as I had mentioned, I had done half of the exams. And for most entry-level roles, they honestly don't even need you to have like 8 exams. Most of them need 2 exams, which luckily, as I mentioned, and I think I'll just keep emphasizing on these, there's the Actuarial Academy scholarships out there that support students through their initial exams. And you're not seeing enough applications or students actually putting in the work required to, secure this funding and keep like receiving funding for your initial exams. So go for those opportunities, because all you need for that first job is 2 to 4 exams, which, you should be able to do in most instances. So yeah, so my first role as an actuarial analyst was back at Britam. So it's an insurance company back in Kenya. And for me, that role was extremely exciting because it was my first role after university. You've learned all these theoretical concepts in class. Then you've also done all these actuarial exams. Then this is the first time you're actually getting to apply it in practice. So for me, that was pretty exciting. So you're sort of like seeing all the theoretical models live in action. So it was extremely exciting. So, and for your initial actuarial role, it would be mostly you trying to transfer all the theoretical concepts from class to work under the supervision of, like more qualified actuaries. I had like, qualified actuaries that I was working for. So they really provided that initial guidance and initial, just feedback on, the things I'd really need to do. So I held that position for just under 2 years. So mostly just using historical insurance data to quantify, the liabilities that companies need to hold. That was exciting, as I've already overemphasized on it. So just seeing the models in action. Then after that, I got the Rhodes Scholarship and joined Oxford University for my master's, which I feel like just, so there was like, there was many combinations of factors that really helped, but I'm sure, just like that, cause doing professional exams, it's not easy. Like regardless of the course, they require commitment, they require, passion, they require you sort of like have a purpose and understand like I need to do this. So I feel like probably a bit of that actuarial conviction, like I was extremely grounded on, I need to do these exams, I'm really trying to balance them out with work, might have helped to just sell my own story, because I was authentically owning my story, and I was owning my story of I know what I need to, like I know I need to put in the work in my profession to get to, just to master my skill. So I feel like it also helps in that way. Like it activates like discipline, it activates, like resilience. Like there's so many things you pick up along your journey while doing the exams. So yeah, so that might have contributed to me, getting like a scholarship or, just like some opportunities. So I joined Oxford, and at Oxford I was there for 2 years. So in the first year, I did a master's in statistical sciences. And again, for me, this was still linked to the fact that as an actuarial student at university, I sort of like had like quite some good training in terms of like statistical models, but I felt like there was some, the world was just like, I feel like 10 years ago is, at least like, in my context again in Kenya, like all the stuff around machine learning, AI, like all these cool models, it was more or less like not so hard of. So for me, I was like, I know like I have these statistical training, but the world has actually moved in terms of how it handles data. So I feel like these statistical sciences course will actually just like augment my, my actuarial statistical knowledge with like newer ways of handling data and thinking about data. So that's how I ended up settling on doing like a master's in statistics. Then in my second year, I did an MBA, which, so for me was again just to like sort of like cement my business acumen and my business strategy knowledge. I appreciate it was quite early on in my career. Most people typically do their MBAs like 8 to 10 years, once they start work. So for me, it came a bit early on, but yeah, like I was still able to really just get further grounding in terms of my, how I think about business strategy. then so post graduate school, I went back to Kenya. So I joined a startup insurance company. So I think one of the things that my master's courses unlocked was my desire to work in companies that had data, the customer, and technology at the core of their strategy. And that led me to, so when I was going back, I sort of like had a clear idea of the kind of companies I wanted to work for. So I wanted to work for companies that really were trying to innovate, like they were trying to utilize data to better serve customers. So that led me to the world of insurtech. And again, that would be a buzzword that most, actuarial students will hear about at some point in their career. So these are just like tech-enabled insurance companies. So I was able to, take up an in-house actuarial role at Griffin Insurance. And they had a very big vision of being able to just change how insurance is consumed in Kenya. So currently, insurance is mostly sold in Kenya via brokers, but their vision was to sell insurance through mobile applications. So just have everything digitized, like from onboarding to claim settlement. And I really, really bought into this vision. So I joined a company that was just starting. I was like one of the first 6 to 8 employees. So literally it was a company starting up. So I joined the company, and it was pretty interesting because then you are trying to really think about ways to, because then you're competing against existing insurance companies that have been there for very more than 100 years or more than 50 years. So you sort of it was very interesting to be part of these companies just trying to really do something differently. So for this particular role, it was mostly helping them price their product. So the product they wanted to sell through mobile apps. So just designing the products, taking the data, just understanding what the data is, what the data is saying basically. So I was able to do this for just again under 2 years. So just using data to come up with pricing models, to come up with these price that say a woman who lives in XYZ part of Nairobi, who is this particular age, how much premium should they pay for their car insurance vis-a-vis a young man who so there's all these risk attributes that need to be quantified, which is the typical work of a pricing actuary. So I found that pretty interesting. So I did that for 2 years, then moved back to the UK. And my first role in the UK was at a micro insurance company. And again, this is a term that most students would come across at some point. So this is basically insurance for the emerging customers. So for a long time, insurance has been preserved for the, access to insurance has not been to, majority of people in emerging markets just because of how the products are designed or the price point. So micro insurance is basically companies that are trying to target these emerging customers. So for me, again, that was extremely, extremely exciting because, it's something I genuinely wanted to be part of. Just, if you can use insurance to help address things like access to health, to help address things like, when a breadwinner passes on, is the company just left hopeless? So for me, being a part of a company that wants to close this insurance gap just to help with access to, health or life insurance was extremely exciting. So I joined this company. So it was called Bima. So I joined the company, I think back in 2019, if I'm not wrong. Yes, I joined the company back in 2019. I think it was pretty exciting work, just designing small ticket insurance products for these, the emerging customers. And for me, that was a very interesting phase in my career because then I was moving from traditional insurance, serving them, to trying to understand the mass market, trying to understand, you have to design extremely simple, affordable, and valuable products because then the money they need to pay for the insurance, it's the same money. It's sort of it's either they're making a decision of should I buy food or should I buy insurance? Should I, so you really need to like design valuable products at the right price points to just, just increase access for people in emerging markets. So I did that, and my role again was just product design, pricing, like estimating liabilities, just the end-to-end actuarial work. So I did that for just under 2 years, and at the time I was finalizing my last exams before qualification. Then I qualified. I think my last exam was September 2020, which was, I remember. So my last exam was actually when my baby was, I have one son who is 4. So he was 20 weeks old on the day I was doing my fellowship exam. So that was crazy, but it was doable. So those are some of the things the actuarial journey is extremely different for different people. Yeah, so for me, it's, one of the interesting things was I had to do my last exam with a 20-week-old baby, which was, a whole experience in itself. So I do my final exam, so I wasn't sure if I was going to pass, just given my circumstances. I had a very young baby, but luckily I passed this exam, and so when I qualified, I took a step back just to see what I'd like to do next with my career. And that's the first time I, now made my first step into the UK market. So my first role was in London, but my first UK role was in London, but I was still doing work for emerging customers. I was working for a microinsurance company. So post qualification, I took up a role at EY, so Ernst & Young, as an actuarial consultant in their non-life actuarial team, a role that I did for 2.5 years. And again, it was just like your typical actuarial work, you're reserving, a bit of pricing. But for EY, the main different piece of work I did was technology transformation. So companies are currently they're transforming their systems. They're just trying to just get up to date with the kind of software they use, the kind of, places they house their different models. So at EY, I was I was involved with mostly technology transformation pieces. So, this would entail you, picking up modeling skills, programming skills in Python or a bit of R. So, just varied work. And again, that's just to put emphasis that the actuarial profession is extremely varied. Yes, I did that for 2.5 years, and then took up my current role, which I started exactly a year ago, actually. Just this week I'll be turning 1 year at my current role. So currently I work as a reserving actuary at Lancashire Insurance Group. Day to day, my role involves, again, just helping the company estimate its, insurance liabilities. I've also been involved in a lot of, so we have all these data sitting within the company, just creating dashboards, and analytics, platforms to help us get insights from our data as they come through. So that's been typically most of the work I've been involved in.
Amazing. Oh my goodness. You have an amazing career trajectory. You've had an amazing career trajectory, and I know you're still going places. This is not the end of it. So all the best with the rest of the journey. And I know we forgot to mention, and I think I had mentioned earlier, and we need to celebrate you as well. You've achieved so much along the way. Even from the I think Strathmore VC Award, which is super inspirational. You are a Rhodes Scholar. Last year you were shortlisted as one of the Actuary of the Year 2024. My goodness, Mercy, you have so much. You've accomplished so much, and you're still young, relatively young. What is because I'm learning we have Gen Zs now. We are millennials. Yeah? We can no longer say we are young.
Yeah, relatively young. Yeah.
What is one accomplishment or an award that you are really proud of, and why?
Wow. Just caught me off guard. Yeah, that's a very, 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 very good question. Yeah, so that's a very good question. So I think if I just look back at some of the accolades I've been able to collect across the last few years, I think for me the one that still stands out was getting the. Now I'm extremely. I'm really undecided. Yeah, but for me, I think it was getting the Strathmore University Vice Chancellor's Award. You know, yeah, and I think like it's sort of like the reason I've picked that, is just because I think it's really unlocked like quite a few of the other things awards I've been able to get after that. And it caught me by surprise. I think I learned about it. I learned about the fact that I was going to get it maybe like 2 days to graduation. I remember it was so hilarious. I hadn't even thought about, okay, what am I going to have for graduation? Like I wasn't really, and maybe that's just my character. Like I'm not really, I don't know, like I just go with the wave. So then I think I remember like our dean at the time, he calls me to the office. Then he's like, on Friday you are going to, I'm like, wait, what does that even mean? So for me, I think it caught me by surprise, which is one thing I always encourage students. If I just reflect back on my university days, everything I did was out of, it was from a place of, this is what I really want to do. Like all the effort I put in my academics was not from a place of, I think there's all these awards, so I'd like to really go for, no, it was just like, this is what I understand I need to do at this phase in my life. So I'll do it to the best of my ability. If I need to do the actuarial exams, I'll actually pursue them with all the energy I have. I enjoyed sports at university, so I genuinely would pose my, like during the sports days, so I'd do everything from a point of, this is genuinely what I want to do at this point. So when the award was, given to me, I was like, wait, and for me, I think I prefer living life that way. Do what your heart feels it needs to do at any point, and everything else falls in place. So for me, I think that was the first time, it just felt like I was just living my life. I was just, pursuing my goals. Then people are noticing, people are, like all these systems are just, sort of like plotting to actually help you move to the next step. So for me, I think the Strathmore University Vice Chancellor's Award was one that stood out because it opened doors to the, it really contributed to the Rhodes Award. It's contributed to so many other things. And it also just helped me as a person to actually just, just keep going, to just keep living life genuinely.
Yes, I think you've chosen right. It's also super inspirational. I read a brief summary when you got the award. I think it's still somewhere in the Google archives. But super inspirational, Mercy, and keep at it. Keep it up. Yeah. Now, while we are heading to the end, just because of time, and we had agreed earlier that you have an amazing story, and I know quite a bit of your story. We need another sitting to talk just about your life story, what inspires you, and all the other things that we've not talked about, because I think we wanted to mostly chat about actuarial science today. So we'll get another chance to just talk about your life story through school and just general life in general. But then I want you to just reflect as we are going to the end now. Reflect back to your actuarial science journey, or even just like generally in life. And I want you to have that student we mentioned, the KCSE candidate who is thinking of going the actuarial science route. What is one thing that you wish you had been told that you are now learning, or you've learned in the recent past? Something you just wish you had been told, or you had known before going this route?
Yeah, so I think if I was to speak to my 20-year-old self or 18-year-old self, just fresh from high school, I think I'd really emphasize the fact that everyone's life journey is different. So my journey would be extremely different from your journey. And, you'd almost feel like initially school, sort of like you'd think it's training you to think the same way, or like learn how to navigate life the same way. And that's just not true in reality. So I think like one thing students should just acknowledge is their journeys will be different. So all these things I've said was just my journey, or the things I had to do. But you're able to learn from people who've gone ahead of you, but just recognize that your journey will be different. So you'd need to keep just checking, do I have the correct things in my toolkit to be able to navigate my own unique life journey. So I think I'd tell my 18-year-old self, everyone has a unique life journey and a unique life story. And at any point, there's always lots of grace and lots of, people within your community or your circle who are able to enable you, to guide you, to handhold you to navigate your own unique journey. So go into it with lots of knowledge on, this is what I want to do. This is everything I need to do for this chosen career path. But just acknowledge that your journeys will be different, but at any point you'll have the right community, or it should be your goal to have the right people to help you navigate your own journey.
100%. I agree 100%. And it's also, I feel like while you were speaking, I was noting a lot, because I think it's also something that I learned kind of late in life, especially after school, because I feel like in school we are almost like uniform. We are thinking along the same lines, get the same grade, and then you get out of school and life is just different for everybody. And I wish I had known that as well earlier.
Yeah, and I totally agree. You sort of have a working formula, while at school you're all just different individuals, but going through the same things. So I think that's something that people learn maybe in their late 20s to their early 30s, which is where we are. So I think but if I was to tell my 18-year-old anything, that would be it. So maybe that's a message to my sister, who is coincidentally turning 18 this year.
Oh, amazing. What's the name of your sister?
She's called Stacy. Yeah, so hopefully.
So Stacy, this is for Stacy's peer.
Exactly.
Yeah?
I'm saying exactly. Yeah.
Yes. Okay. Mercy, did we miss anything? I know we talked about actuarial exams, what they need to have in mind, the students who are thinking of going actuarial route. And then you've touched about how career is looking like from your own perspective. Anything else we missed to chat about, actuarial related? So do you have things, because I know in engineering we have universities who are accredited to offer this course and all that. Do you have such a thing with especially in the Kenyan context?
Yeah, so there's an accreditation process. And so basically what the accreditation do is for instance, you remember I mentioned that the exams are administered by the I4 for the UK, SOA for the US, and all those are the typical routes most Kenyans or African students pursue. So there's accreditation for these particular qualifications, and currently there's so basically what the accreditation does is, if say University A had accreditation with the I4, it would mean that by default, if you are to do your actuarial degree at University A, you'd be able to, so again, just based on what they've, the agreements and all that, it would be you get exemptions from these 4 exams or from these 2 exams. But currently, at least as far as I'm aware, none of the universities in Kenya has, but most of them, some of them are working towards it, but none of them yet has this accreditation. But the good thing is the courses are quite aligned to the, these exams, which is one thing that really helped me actually with my exams, So what I would learn in class would be quite mirrored to what the institute exams were. So I think in as much as we don't have accreditation yet in any university in Kenya, the courses quite mirror the syllabus of these examining bodies. So I think students have stand a chance to still be able to do the exams reasonably well. Then the other thing is, there's also other initiatives to help with higher level exams. So for the past, I would say more than a decade, the Insurance Regulatory Authority of Kenya has been running a scholarship. So, but that's for your master's. So after your undergrad, there's always like a scholarship to I think it's now called Bayes Business School in London, to pursue your actuarial masters. And luckily, if you do that, then you get exemptions from a few exams. But you see, you still need to cross the hurdle of your initial exams, which, as I mentioned, you possibly should be able to start while at university, because they'll be required for your first job, and there's opportunities out there to support students who are not able to financially afford them. So I think still go for them, get your initial exams out, get your first job. Then if you think doing the masters and getting exemptions is a route you'd like to take, there's also like opportunities to do that.
Okay, amazing. Yes. Anything else we forgot to touch on actuarial related?
I feel like it's just it's basically just that, as like what my parting shot was, everyone's life journey is different, and that's also true for the actuarial exam journey. Everyone's journey is different, but my husband kept saying eventually all of us will qualify as actuaries, as long as you set your mind, this is my goal. So what that just means is some people will take shorter, some people will pass without failing, some people will have to, redo some exams a number of times. So everyone's journey is different, but it's about like maintaining your goal. It's about, just not losing sight of what you'd like to achieve. And the different exam journeys don't really dictate how brilliant an actuary you are. I think, and that's true to life, like in other aspects of life. You should just like run your own journey, do everything you need to do, self-correct, and just get back on track.
Definitely. So because of time, Mercy, and I know you are busy, we'll look for you another time. We'll have another episode where you will tell us more about your more of like personal, intimate life story. So until then, just to say thank you so much again. I know you are busy, and we are shooting this on a weekend, so I really appreciate you creating this time to be here. Asante sana, Mercy.
Thank you, Gladys. Again, once more, thanks for having me, and I've really enjoyed our conversation. And keep doing what you're doing. You're doing amazing for the next generation of actuaries. Thank you. Bye.
Asante, and goodbye.
Okay, bye.